This is the Tropic Pianist Gamers podcast, episode 20. Today I've got Hayley Perkins with me with If Diets Don't Work, What Does? Welcome, Hayley. Would you like to tell me a bit about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Jen. Thank you for having me here today. It's lovely to come and speak to you. So, yeah, If Diets Don't Work, What Does? Has been 20 years of my personal and professional experience. So I've been a trained therapist now for almost 20 years. I'm really not sure where that time has gone. And like a lot of therapists and coaches, I decided to retrain following my own experience. So I do have a traditional practice. I work face to face with lots of different mental health issues, anxiety, depression. I work with relationship issues, but the biggest thing that biggest passion of mine is working with people with disordered eating. I've had a very dysfunctional relationship with food and my body for as long as I can remember. My mum put me on my first diet when I was 14, but my disordered food relationship started probably at about 6 years old. I can very much remember secret eating from about the age of 6. So through my own therapeutic journey and understanding my own relationship with food and body and how diet culture links into that, I decided to retrain. I left my corporate career that I'd spent 20 odd years developing and retrained. And that's been like the last 18 years. So If Diets Don't Work is like an accumulation of all my personal experience, but also my professional qualifications that I've brought together to help women to heal their food and body relationship. And I love it.
That's amazing. And it's interesting you help with anxiety and depression as well, because obviously that's directly relevant to my story. Can you tell me a bit more about the diet culture?
That's a massive topic, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it is. I mean, I as a therapist, when I'm working with clients, I do look at like the why, what's going on behind their eating, but we do touch on diet culture. And the trouble with diet culture is it very much looks as, there's two sides to it. One is the diet itself, but then you've also got like the whole diet culture stuff. So from a diet perspective, diets only look at the physical aspect of our weight. So it very much looks as weight being the problem. I don't believe that. I believe our weight is a symptom of what's going on in our lives. Okay, for some people, they may have gained a bit of weight, they've had children or lifestyle change, and for them, going on a restrictive diet, eating less, exercising more works for them. But the statistics show that 95% of people who lose weight regain it within a year or two. So you've got to start wondering, when you've got these statistics that are going on, something's not working. And the issue with diets is they focus on weight being the problem. Okay, and weight is not just a physical thing. We have an emotional attachment to food. So eat less and exercise is only part of the bigger picture. So what happens when we go on a diet is we restrict calories, or we restrict food groups, and it's a bit like a pendulum. So we go into our restrictive mode. The conscious mind goes, right, I need to lose weight, let's eat less and exercise, because that's kind of what we're programmed to think. The subconscious has got different ideas, because your reasons for eating, for me, I got to a size 24. I was a size 24 at my biggest, so I was nearly 19 stone, I think. I didn't get to that weight because I was greedy or lazy or lacked willpower. I got to that weight, which I didn't know at the time, because I believed all of that stuff. I believed I was greedy and lazy. I got to that weight because my weight was an armor. My fat, if you like, was a protection. It meant that I was unattractive. That was my story. Men wouldn't find me attractive. So it was my subconscious way of protecting me from having to have relationships that I really struggled with. And that's a story for another day, to actually unpick and talk about me understanding my own food relationship. It's complicated, it's complex, and diets are part of the problem. They're not part of the solution, but diet culture, which is like this obsession with the need to be thin, that we're only lovable and acceptable when we're thin. We only have to look at social media and like airbrushed models and things like that to tap into our not good enough stuff. And every single day in my practice, I work with women that come with so low self-worth, low confidence. You know, their whole world is consumed by their weight and that number on the scales. And I'm a believer, yes, okay, there are links between being overweight and health, albeit I know the impact that constantly dieting had on my emotional and psychological health was far worse than any impact that that extra weight was having on me. So if diets don't work, what does is about supporting women to let go of diets and diet culture. And it's really hard because even like me, I've done a lot of work on myself. And I think in terms of like how I think and feel about my body now, I'm in recovery, but I'm constantly being pulled into that need to compare myself. I'm constantly pulled into that need to lose a few extra pounds. It's almost like if you're not on that dieting bandwagon, there's something wrong with you. But actually, the freedom that I have reached in my mind and in my body around not constantly counting calories, getting on the scales, just down to, I used to run a weight loss group. The irony is not lost on me. And ladies come and be weighed, and they'd be taking their earrings out to get on the scales because of that fear that's installed in them, not losing that extra half a pound, or the fear of actually gaining weight. It's so complex, what diet culture creates, the mindset that diet culture creates in us. And so many women spend the whole of their lives, and men, on that cycle. And I'd had enough of it. I decided, and it's been a transition, but I knew 20 years ago when I went into that, well, it's more than 20 years. I've been a therapist for 20 years. When I first went into therapy, I never expected to like fast forward and be where I am now. I was entrenched in diet culture, and I work in the field. So I hang out in groups where people are talking about diets all of the time. And I'm like, but I've got the strongest, from rolling my eyes at things that get said. But it is, diet culture is everywhere, and it's I need to lose weight. For holidays, for Christmas, we have these pivotal points throughout the year,
definitely.
don't we? And then we'll restrict, but with restriction, this is what I was saying, it's like a pendulum. So we restrict over here, and then something will happen, and we go back over to the eating. So we live in this world of rigidity and chaos. Rigid, the rules that we follow, the food rules that we follow. And if we're in rigidity, we feel nice and safe, don't we? We've got the rules. But unfortunately, life doesn't allow us. We want to sometimes have a bit of cake, or we want to sometimes go out and have a splurge, but then we judge that, don't we? So we're constantly in this like rigidity and chaos, and it's so unhealthy, So part of what I teach is like permission to eat. Give yourself permission to eat the foods you want to eat. But the belief is once you start doing that you're not going to stop. So we're fearful. We're so afraid of actually trusting our bodies, trusting when we know that we're full, trusting when we know when we're hungry, trusting that actually we fancy a bit of cake and it's okay to have it. We've lost that natural association, that connection.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not in the diet culture myself, but I've seen so many people yo-yo, and I've kind of got my own systems. But so you've got quite a story there. I've heard somewhere along the lines that you've got a book. Would you like to tell me more about the book?
If diets don't work, what does? I wrote this because when I'm working with clients, I like to send them a little gift pack. And this is part of the gift pack. So I wrote it, because I wanted to write a book. It's not technically a book. The first part of it is about diet culture. It gets you thinking about, one of the questions in here is around what are your fears related to stopping dieting? When you've been someone that's been on that dieting roller coaster for a long, long time, it can be quite addictive. It can almost be quite soothing in some ways, knowing that you've always got the option to go on another diet. I once worked with a lady who had a bit of a realization that she'd lost the same 2 stone at least 20 times. And she realized that actually she was quite addicted to the losing weight process, that euphoria that it used to give her, the people telling her she was looking really well. And it was really interesting. So I put together the book, which is like, the first sort of 30 pages are all about lots of different questions, getting you to explore and understand your own relationship to diet culture. So dieting rules, eating environment. You know, so many people sit down to eat when they're really quite stressed. So there's no way that eating experience is going to be satisfying and pleasurable, especially if you've got young kids and stuff like that. So it's just getting you, I like to just agitate people's thought processes a little bit around their relationship with food. And that's what this book is really about. It's about exploring how we are so intrinsically entrenched in diet culture and the fears that that brings up for us. And it's also a journal as well. So there's like a 60-day journal where people can start tracking their food and mood. It's not about counting calories. This is about just having awareness of hunger levels, eating mindfully. So some of the intuitive eating stuff is in there. That's not really the practice that I follow. I do sort of pick out elements of intuitive eating, but the way I work is more sort of around inner child, inner and outer child work, which is about so much of our eating starts in childhood, you know, and our experiences in childhood. My mum used food as love, you know, so love very much represents food and love are very intrinsically linked. So at times in my life where I've felt unloved, food has become the thing that replaced that. And I think that's very common for a lot of people, and no diet is ever gonna sort that one out.
It's quite interesting how complex it actually is, because I've never thought about that side of food. Well, trying not to use the word diets particularly, but yeah, nutrition in general. It's so much more than just a staying alive kind of function, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. You know, and for day one of birth, you know, food represents so many things. You know, we fall over when we're learning to walk and graze our knee, and mum will pick us up and give us a hug and tell us, oh, don't cry, have a biscuit. So the messages that we're receiving there is, don't show your feelings, eat instead. Some people, not everybody picks up those messages. We all pick up messages in different ways, but it is about, and this is where diets really fall down, because they only tackle the physical. For anybody who has held on to extra weight, has struggled to lose weight, has been in that cycle, it's unlikely to just be about their ability to eat or not eat certain things. There's often something a little bit more deep rooted going on, and that's where having the opportunity to explore that in a way that is just giving people a space to just think a bit differently is so powerful. Just this week I've started 2 new clients on my a different path course, and one lady last night, all I said to her was, how do you parent yourself? And she just looked at me like, and just said, I don't.
Yeah, that's probably the most common answer, I reckon.
You know, it's like we don't even consider the way we actually, you know, you've got young mums that are like doing everything for everybody else, making sure their children are okay, but they're not even on their own lists. And we talk about this stuff at a very conscious level.
Yeah,
we don't know how to actually do that for ourselves. You know, we say to ourselves, we understand the concept of self-care, but what does that actually mean? And that's a big part of the work that I do, is helping people to really understand, because they're not flawed. You know, you're not flawed because you hold extra weight. You know, there's just something else that's going on. The subconscious is holding on to that weight for a reason. And even if you are restricting and cutting back, you can still not lose weight, and that becomes really like confusing then, because you start thinking, well, I'm not eating what I normally eat, but I'm not losing weight. Why is that? And often that's because the subconscious is stopping you.
Well, so it's quite interesting with the parallels with overcoming anxiety myself. The key to that was finding the root cause of it, and it sounds like a similar idea with the food side of it. So that's interesting to know. Thank you. You mentioned on a previous chat that you were about slowing life down to, I'm guessing that's to separate the chaos from the rigid bit.
Absolutely. You know, I would say 90% of people I work with have busy lives. Being busy is like the new I'm fine, isn't it? It's like a badge of honor, you know, and it's part of our ego self. So as we're born into the world and we create an ego, and we say things like, oh, he's got a big ego, you know, so we almost associate ego with being a bad thing, but we all have an ego. It's our constructed self, and part of being busy is part of our ego. But of course, you know, it's, if we don't make time for ourselves, if you're already busy, so if I'm working with a client, they're already busy, me giving them more stuff to do it's not going to happen. You know, they're going to just, you know, I can see the patterns. So I'm very conscious of that. And so the way I work is more about giving them a space to actually start to slow things down a little bit. And that's not just a time slowing down. This is like their nervous system, you know, actually giving them a space. And I use hypnosis. So I'm trained in psychotherapy, counseling, talking therapy. I'm currently training in advanced hypnotherapy. So I've started to introduce some hypnosis into the sessions that I do to calm people's overthinking minds. So being busy isn't just a physically being busy, it's like being busy in our
I know
head.
that all too well.
So we have to start to create some time and space to think, to be. And when we can actually just calm the chaos that's often going on within us, that frees up space to be able to start thinking about what might or may not be going on, because also a lot of that chaos is driving the eating behaviors. So we're eating to kind of try and calm ourselves down, because eating is a soothing mechanism. So we get into the end of the day, habit forms a part of it as well, but just taking that time out to slow things down, which can actually be quite scary for people when their comfort zones are quite chaotic, as in always on the go, always thinking, God, I can't wait for the weekend to have a bit of a break. But then the weekend gets here, and it's no irony that then you find something else to do. So there's never any real quiet times, because often people who are very, very busy actually find quiet times quite distressing, boring, whatever we want to label it. So
That's me.
we're constantly creating chaos, and that is a protection. That's the subconscious protecting you from harm, because once we have some time to think, it's like, oh shit, I've got to deal with my stuff now. So fundamental that we actually start to slow our lives down a little bit, so to give ourselves some time and capacity. And it's really interesting, just doing that has a fundamental knock-on effect on our eating. That's without anything else. And that's pretty simple, really, isn't it? When you think about the struggle we have with trying to diet or trying to restrict, you know, that process is hard work. Even if we try to convince ourselves it's not. Going out for a meal and having to eat the salad and all your mates are having burger and chips is like, that's not pleasurable.
Difficult, isn't it?
It's that they're eating your salad and pretending you're enjoying it, and inside you're seething, and you'll go, oh, I'll just have a chip then. And these are the patterns, aren't they?
Yeah.
So that's not easy, you know, whereas actually just kind of when we go inward, what we often do with diets is we're trying to heal from the outside in. If we're slimmer, we believe that we will feel better internally, and that's not how it happens. I don't know, you know, you lose weight, yes you do, there are an element, if you feel better you're getting into smaller clothes, but if there's self-worth stuff going on, that doesn't change by losing weight. So this is why we gain weight again, because the fat girl, if you like, the beliefs of the fat girl are still there, and so her reasons for eating are still there. If you've got a unhappy marriage or a job you don't like, that doesn't change just because you've lost weight. So the triggers are still there, and that's why we gain the weight again. But when you start healing from the inside, so when you start to slow life down, when you start to speak to yourself with kindness and compassion, so when you imagine you've got this little 6-year-old inside you that needs you to take care of her physically, mentally and emotionally, and when you start doing that on a regular basis, guess what happens? Your self-worth increases, you feel better, you know, you wake up every day looking forward to the day instead of like thinking about what you're going to be eating that day. And that the knock-on effect of that is that then influences your food relationship, because you're doing less of the emotional eating, the binge eating, and all. Does that make sense? So
yeah, you're completely
healing from.
You basically described me, and I know where I need to go next. Like, yeah. So thank you for sharing your story with me. It looks like someone we need to look up straight away. So I'll probably be in touch in the near future. Where can we find you if we're looking for you?
Yeah, so I hang out on Facebook. I have got a website, but it's kind of in shake up mode at the moment because I've been making some changes this year. I've decided I'm not running groups, I'm not working in groups anymore, not for the foreseeable. I am only working one-to-one, and I launched a new program called A Different Path. It's a 4-week program where it's a 90-minute session each week, supported then by an extra 30 days. So you can find me on Facebook. If diets don't work, then what does? and I hang out on all the socials really. I won't give you my website link at the moment because it doesn't reflect where I'm at with my business at the moment. So there's been quite a bit of evolution in my world to support my well-being, because ultimately what I'm teaching my clients is you've got to come first, but I need to
lead by your own example.
Absolutely. And you know, at times we're not doing that, are we? And I then see the impact of that. You know, I'm naturally a people pleaser and overgiver, and I'm a therapist, so there's lots of opportunity to do that. And every now and again I have to like consolidate, pull myself back and look at what really lights my fire, and working one-to-one does, because it offers a safe environment for people to really talk about what's going on for them.
Definitely.
I will send my links over to you anyway, and you know, if anyone wants to come into my world, please do.
Yeah, I'll add them to the episode once it's published.
Fantastic.
Cool. All right, thank you for coming to talk to me today.
You're welcome. Thanks, Jen.
All right.